ever, and also in conjunction with the National Conference of Democratic Mayors, welcome to the mayoral kickoff of the 2020 National Democratic Convention. This special event, Mayor's 2020 Vision for America, an American Breakthrough. We salute the great city of Milwaukee, the site for the 2020 Democratic Convention. As many of you may know, Milwaukee has always been a very special part of the United States Conference of Mayors. It was in 1932 that the mayor Dan Hone, and by the way, he served from 1916 to 1940. The mayor Dan Hone went to Detroit with other mayors to create and found this great organization, the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And then came Henry Meyer. For 28 years, the mayor of Milwaukee. He founded the National Conference of Democratic Mayors. He was a Triple Crown mayor. He was president of the National Conference of Democratic Mayors. He was president of the National League of Cities. And he was also president of our organization, the United States Conference of Mayors. And it was in Milwaukee in 1976, in July, that a young governor came to our meeting. His name was Jimmy Carter. And from that meeting came forth mayoral support to his presidency. And today I am even more proud to present to you the host mayor for this convention, elected 5 times in the Congress. And in 2020, he was elected to his 5th term as a mayor of this great city. And since 1960, ladies and gentlemen, there's only been a few mayors, only been one of these served for just 4 months. And so not only is Milwaukee famous for its beer, but it's also famous for the great leadership of the Milwaukee mayors. And so with that, I'm proud to present to you Mayor Tom Barrett, our host mayor for the 2020 National Convention. Mayor Barrett.
Well, thank you very much, Tom, for that very, very warm introduction and that important history of the city of Milwaukee and our mayors. As Tom pointed out, Daniel Hone served 24 years, Henry Meyer served 28 years, and I was just elected to my 5th term. But given the longevity of those mayors, I'm still on probation because their mark was so deep here in the city of Milwaukee. But I just want to welcome all of you to a virtual fantastic time here in the city of Milwaukee, because for the first time in the history of this state, and for the first time in the history of this city, we are hosting a major political party convention. But I think as every person recognizes, this is no conventional convention. This is not what we contemplated 17 months ago. This is not what we had hoped for in terms of economic impact. But the reason for that, we all understand, is because the pandemic and the ensuing economic tsunami that has affected all of America has clearly taken its toll on every single city in this country. And so the stakes are higher. The stakes are higher than they have ever been before in a presidential race. With 170,000 people having already died as a result of COVID-19, we clearly need to have a president who is going to take this pandemic seriously. We cannot afford to have a president who calls it a hoax, or makes fun of people who wear masks, or belittles public health experts. And that's exactly what we have seen with the current occupant of the White House. What we clearly need as a nation is we need some adult supervision coming out of the White House. And that's exactly where Joe Biden comes in. Because with his track record as a senator, as a vice president of this country, he understands what we need to do. Rather than having policies and tweets and rants that divide this country and pit people against each other, he is committed to not only overcoming this pandemic, but making sure that we can have our economy back on all cylinders and addressing the very, very important issues that each one of us face as a mayor when it comes to racial justice. This is an American moment, and it's a moment that we all have to take very, very seriously. So I want to thank all of my fellow mayors because we clearly are on the front lines. And when we talk about issues like police funding, I think just about every mayor on this call understands that even before the pandemic, many of our cities were facing very, very serious financial issues. But with the pandemic, cities and states around this nation clearly need help from the federal government. We clearly need a champion in the White House. And I'm confident that Vice President Biden is going to provide the leadership that we need to help us make sure that we can make the decisions that not only protect our citizens, but also allow us to invest in issues like mental health, like housing, like education, like infrastructure, because that's what makes our cities so great. So again, as much as I would love to have every single one of you in Wisconsin today, we've got a lot more important work to do between now and November 3rd. But I will tell you this, when we made the pitch for the convention, one of our arguments was, look, July and August in Wisconsin, this is when people love to come here. It's heaven on earth. And as I look out the front window of my home right now, I see exactly what I was talking about. I guarantee you, every one of you would be having a wonderful time because it's a picture perfect day. The weather is fabulous. And we are on America's fresh coast. So although our moment in the sun has been a little hampered by what's going on in this nation, we understand. We understand that we have to move this country forward. But I invite all of you, not only to virtually come to Milwaukee, but at some point to come to this great city. We're going to leave the lights on. So with that, I'm going to turn it, I think, over to Eric Garcetti, who's done a fabulous job throughout the last few months in bringing Democratic mayors together, because I think we all have an infrastructure in our communities that will allow us to help the ground game. And we see how important that is now, just with the recent attacks that President Trump has levied against the U.S. Postal Service, how important the work we do to make sure that people's votes not only will be counted, but will be counted in a fair way. We've got a lot of work to do. So Mayor Garcetti, keep up the great job, and let's move this great country forward.
Thank you, Mayor Barrett. And our next speaker, which has already been announced, he is the chair of our Latino Alliance. He founded it. He is the chair of our Infrastructure Task Force. He founded it. And he leads, in my opinion, the strongest international organization on the planet. He's the chair of the C40. 6 mayors have served as chair: London, Toronto, New York, Rio, and Paris. And now Los Angeles leads the C40. His passion and national leadership has made us feel, many of us feel, maybe he should have run for president this year, along with the other mayors, Booker, Castro, Bloomberg, Hickenlooper, and of course, our own special mayor, Mayor Pete. Instead, he decided to stay and lead his city, and he's helping lead all of us. We thank him for his continued leadership as the president of the National Conference of Democratic Mayors. We know he's ready for action in this 2020 presidential election. Ladies and gentlemen, the mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti.
Well, thank you so much, Tom, and thank you for just your extraordinary leadership, the leadership of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, a nonpartisan organization, but we know how well we play with Democrats, and we appreciate that great work. And Virginia Mayor, who has led us for so many years as Democratic mayors, bringing a local voice to Democratic politics and a Democratic voice to local politics. Both of you see presidents of your organizations come and go, and you're still there, and you really are not just the institutional memory, but the driving forces of Democratic mayors and of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. So thank you both. And Mayor Barrett, I'm going to be drinking some Miller beer. It's too early now on the West Coast, but tonight, in your honor, try to get on a Harley, do all those things that we would be celebrating. Milwaukee's where my grandmother lived for so many years. I was so looking forward to coming. But thank you for virtually hosting us. And we are in Milwaukee. We are celebrating Milwaukee. And I know we're going to deliver a victory in Wisconsin, and Wisconsin victory runs through Milwaukee. So thank you in advance. I know how extraordinarily hard you worked to land this convention. And certainly I think that Democratic Party should look in 4 years at coming back in reality to Milwaukee. So I'll plant that seed because Milwaukee deserves it. So thank you. I want you all to imagine a moment in which just close your eyes, and it's January 21st. It's a cold day, because it always is in Washington. And the mall truly is filled, not by the estimates of a narcissistic president with nobody there, but truly filled with over 1 million people coming to see the hinge of history. to see Joe Biden put his left hand on the Bible with Joe Biden sitting next to him, or standing next to him, excuse me, with sitting next to them, you have our first African-American and first female vice president of the United States of America, Kamala Harris, and Doug Emhoff, her great husband. We look and we see a moment in which we just can feel what it means to breathe again, to breathe in democracy, not under attack, to breathe in healing in the midst of this pandemic, to breathe in hope as we come back and build a country back better. We can see and feel what that is like, but let me tell you, friends, it's not going to just happen. It's not going to happen automatically. The PTSD we have from 4 years ago knows that every chapter of American history is grinded out through hard work, through door to door, or in this case, maybe phone to phone conversations with neighbors, with friends. We as mayors know something about winning elections, or we wouldn't have those titles. And so that's why Democratic mayors is going to be active in those 5 key swing states that will deliver not just a win, but a resounding win that rejects 4 years of Trumpism, of this America First lie that he put forward, and puts now instead in place Americans, all Americans first, leaving nobody behind, restoring the soul of this country. And it isn't just our state that is under attack, the government, the institutions, the rights and responsibility, the democracy itself, the right to vote, the United States Postal Service. It's also our nation, family writ large, the idea that we are one people, or that we can strive to try to be one people. That has been under attack for 4 years. So I'm so excited about this election. I was honored to be the second co-chair nationally of Joe Biden's campaign. And that didn't come, it was a very, very difficult decision, because I felt as close and so inspired by dear friends like Cory Booker and Pete Buttigieg and Kamala Harris and folks like Mike Bloomberg, who chaired C40 before me, who were on the ballot. But Joe Biden had showed up in my city and helped me raise the minimum wage to $15. He'd showed up in his city, and Dr. Biden did, to make community college free and boost by almost 50% the number of our public school children going to college in Los Angeles. He showed up in Washington, D.C. when we were trying to bring the Olympics back to America with no notice, and showed up to address the world's Olympic organizing committees. He showed up for me time after time after time again. The day he decided not to run, I was with him in his vice presidential residence this last time. And we had 2 hours, just one-on-one at breakfast, where he cried and talked about his son, Bo, and everything that he had gone through. And I knew this was one of the greatest men I had ever met, and hoped that one day, maybe, just maybe, he'd have another shot. And certainly when I endorsed him, everybody said, well, it's all over. But sometimes it's better to be lucky and loyal than to be smart. And America certainly is very lucky to have somebody who's been as loyal to us, who believes that the idea of public service is something great and grand, that it is noble, that it is a profession that you have to perfect, not that you can walk into just because you've been a casino owner and you have aspirations. You have to actually take the time to have the relationships with international leaders like Joe Biden does. You have to take the time to have the experience on Capitol Hill to deliver legislation and to rebuild a nation as he did in 2009. And with a running mate who also understands that. Think about this. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris both came from local government. In Kamala's case in San Francisco, where she was district attorney, and Joe from county government, where he got his start. And so they know that this nation is made up of the 19,000 local municipalities, not Washington to us, but from us to Washington. So I would ask you 2 things. One is get to know this platform. The 4 things, and it's the most progressive platform by far that Democrats have ever put together. And the unity, because Democrats, we are good at dividing ourselves, but the unity has been phenomenal. That we have seen in the last few weeks, these unity meetings between Biden and Bernie people who put together an environmental agenda that labor and environmental activists have embraced. Bringing in things like the care economy, where people who are always taken for granted, that we suddenly see now in this pandemic, care for children, who take care of seniors in the last days of their lives, that they deserve a better life themselves. That racism isn't just an issue area to put number 20 on your Democratic platform, but one of the 4 main pillars of the Build Back Better plan. And as, yes, the Infrastructure Task Force chair for all of you, infrastructure, green infrastructure, the boldest plan we've seen in 100 years in our country. This is what we are looking for. But we, secondly, have to work for it. We are the ones who have to deliver this victory. We are the ones who have to make the case to the American people that there is a better tomorrow. I'm not running for re-election in November. So I can say with credibility, this is the most important election of our lives, because usually we say that when we're on the ballot, right? But this one, it is true. This is either the moment that we look back and say that we turned the corner and established an America that leads again, or this is the beginning of the American decline. This is the moment we say democracy is enough to embrace and defend, or we say people can steal elections, say whatever they want, lies are equal to truth. We know that America has to stand for something, and we as Democrats have always stood for the values that all Americans belong here and that all Americans deserve a better tomorrow. So thank you in advance. I'm so proud to be your chair, and I'm so proud to introduce, I think I'm supposed to do it, right, Tom, directly? Our next speaker? Or you? Okay, thank you. A woman that I just have the deepest love and respect for. It is a tough time to be a mayor, and there's no place that it's been tougher, where you have CNN headquarters, where you've had tough police actions that call to question what public safety will look like in America. A woman who herself, her life story has overcome not just the kind of adversity that we read about, but the tenacity that if you haven't spent time with her, you might not have felt. And I'll say this because Joe Biden asked me to be one of 4 people to help him find a running mate. I'm so proud that a mayor went the distance to the end and easily could have been a running mate for Joe Biden. And I don't know what her plans are in the future, but watch Keisha Lance Bottoms, because her star has not only risen, it is continuing to rise in the toughest of moments. And Mayor, I will say we are defined not by what we set out to do and how well we do it, but what we don't expect to happen and how we rise to the occasion. And by that, you are one of our shining stars. It is my honor to introduce my sister mayor and the mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms.
Thank you so much, Mayor Garcetti, and to Mayor Barrett, and to all of you all for putting this together today and for joining us today. Mayor, your words are very gracious, and I thank you for all that you have done for all of us and your leadership as we've all transitioned to the space that we are into this week. And what an incredible week it is for us. We had all obviously anticipated that we would be traveling and that we would be in some nice, cool summer weather. I hope in the great state of Wisconsin, when we first began discussions about where we would hold our convention. But 2020 certainly has been full of a lot of twists and turns. And what I can say is that as a party and as a country, we are still standing. And that's what Joe Biden represents to all of us. I was looking back at my journal that I carried with me as I traveled across the country on behalf of the vice president. And I joked with him when we did an event just a couple of weeks ago. And I said, I know you catch a lot of flack for being in your basement, but I, for one, enjoy being in my basement because it allows me the opportunity to access props. So this is one of my favorite props here. This is the book that I carried across the country. And in this book, I wrote a note on July 2nd, 2019. And in part, it said, just 4 days after my endorsement of Vice President Biden, I feel very vulnerable right now. I didn't know where this election would lead us, but what I knew then is what I continue to know now, is that Joe Biden would be the one to lead us through this chaos and through the confusion and through the uncertainty that Donald Trump has created across America. But I also show you 2 other things that I've added to my book over the past several weeks. One is a picture, and I know I've shared this with some of you all, a picture of my grandmother's grandparents who were formerly enslaved, and also a note that I wrote from John Lewis's last essay. Answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe in. This is the calling that we all have before us this week. To answer the callings of our heart and to stand up for what we believe in. And although we are separated geographically, what I know we all believe in is the greatness of this country and the resilience of this country. And so as we worked over the past year to get to this time, and as we have worked to create a platform that speaks to who we are as a party, I truly believe that it reflects what the calling of our hearts are. And that calling is one that believes in democracy. It's one that values communities. It's one that believes in respectful conversation and disagreement on policy positions. It's one that elevates women. It's one that elevates people of color. It's one that recognizes that we are not perfect, but it recognizes that as a great democracy, we always have another opportunity to get it right. And the reason I put the picture of my grandmother's grandparents in this book, because what I know is that this is what they believed in terms of the goodness of who we are as Americans. And what Mayor Garcetti shared, representing 19,000 municipalities across this country, we reflect a diversity of voices and wants and concerns and needs. But at the end of the day, it really is about us coming together as one for the good of our country. And that's what makes me so very proud to be a part of this party and to have had the opportunity to help create our platform. We heard testimony, not including our unity subcommittees, but we heard testimony, over 11 hours worth of testimony. Over 55 witnesses joined us to say and to share what they wanted to see us push forward as a party. And so as we embark upon this week, I am most excited about this next chapter in our country and in the life of our democracy. This next chapter will be one that our children can be proud of. Because for those of you who have children, you know that this is an uncertain time in our country. We're feeling anxiety as adults and as leaders, and our children are looking to us to get it right. And so I am grateful to be a part of getting it right so that I can begin to call my children back in the room when the president speaks, so that I can look at the television and say to my daughter, you too can be on that screen as president of the United States. And I can say it, and I can look to Joe Biden and say that not only does he say it, but he reflects it in each and everything he does on our behalf. So with that, we'll throw it back to you, Tom, but I thank you all for the opportunity to share. And I'm also grateful for the opportunity to represent mayors across this country in this great next chapter in our democracy known as America.
Thank you so much, Mayor Bottoms. Atlanta, Georgia, the city too busy to hate, reminding all, the white mayor Ivan Allen came to Washington, D.C. in 1964 and testified for this organization for the Civil Rights Act of '64, the Public Accommodations Act. Thank you for your leadership through this crisis that we've all going through, Mayor Bottoms. And so now I turn to our featured speaker today. As the 78th president of the United States Conference of Mayors, our next speaker took the gavel of our organization just a few weeks ago on July 1st. The history of our organization shows that every 4 years we come forward with a bipartisan agenda for the candidates who are running for president of the United States. It was in December of last year, 2019, that we went to Waterloo, Iowa, led at that time by Republican President Brian Barnett, and we adopted our 2020 vision in conjunction with the Accelerator for America, our strong partner on urban issues. Since then, our political world, ladies and gentlemen, has turned upside down. with COVID-19, with economic shutdown causing economic destruction, and with the civil unrest following police actions and the Black Lives Matter national awakening. Our new president has faced these challenges. He's worked diligently with mayors across this nation, and he's come forward with a new mayor's vision for America, an American breakthrough. The nation's mayors have accepted his vision. They have adopted his vision unanimously. And today, at this kickoff of this historic convention, I am proud to present to you the 87th President of the United States Conference of Mayors as he presents to you today our vision, not for just 2020, but beyond, as we break through for a better America, a stronger America, a more empathetic America, an intelligent America, and a caring America. Ladies and gentlemen, the 78th President of the United States Conference of Mayors, Mayor Greg Fisher of Louisville, Kentucky.
Thank you, Tom, and thanks to all my fellow colleague mayors for being on the call here today. And I can just say it's an honor to join everybody virtually as America takes the next step in this process of democracy, nominating the two major party candidates who will ask the American people for the honor of serving our country as president for the next 4 years. I am deeply proud to serve my hometown as mayor of Louisville, but proud to serve as the president of this great conference and proud to serve with this group of mayors who are incredible leaders, patriots, and friends. For the last several weeks, even as they were working night and day to manage their city's responses to COVID-19, the economic downturn, and renewed calls for racial justice, teams of mayors all over America have been virtually gathering to discuss our biggest challenges as a country and how we can address them. We're releasing our plan, the Mayor's Vision for America, today at the beginning of 2 weeks of national party conventions. These conventions are critical moments in our national conversation about who we are as a nation and the values that should guide us in the months and years ahead. Naturally, America's mayors are an essential part of that conversation. The men and women who crafted this plan represent 86% of the nation's population. Our cities collectively account for 91% of America's GDP. And according to poll after poll over many years, the American people place more trust and faith in their local government than in state or federal government. Mayors and all local public servants, we're everybody's neighbor, and our neighbors count on us to produce tangible results. And that's true whether we're talking about everything from trash pickup to libraries, parks, 911 service, police and fire departments, public health, and a lot more. Mayors have to get things done, no matter the challenge. And right now, cities and towns across America are facing a combination of challenge unlike anything any of us have ever seen. The worst pandemic in 100 years, an economy more fragile and uncertain than it's been in 80 years, and long overdue calls for racial justice and equity that are more intense and widespread than we've seen in over 50 years. And let's be clear, while these crises affect all of us, they hit hardest in our communities of color. We've seen how social inequities have meant that Black and brown Americans are more likely to get sick and die of COVID-19, lose their jobs or their businesses to the economic downturn, or die at the hands of law enforcement. None of these are acceptable in our great country. The very existence and persistence of these disparities is more than tragic. It must be a call to action. And that's why America's mayors decided to weigh in now, today, as part of the national conversation that begins today, first with Democrats, then next week with the Republicans. And that's appropriate because the conference is a bipartisan plan. It was crafted by Democrats and Republicans from all parts of the country, doing something all too rare in America these days, working together around a common vision and a common goal. We call it an American breakthrough. The Mayor's Vision for America outlines 10 priorities for us as a nation and steps we can take to achieve them. These goals are ambitious and they are achievable. Here they are. Foster economic recovery for a stronger America. Dismantle systemic racism and advance human and civil rights. Achieve public safety and justice for all. Provide equitable, quality health care and human services. Rewrite the tax code to help hardworking taxpayers and reduce economic inequality. Make housing more affordable and address homelessness, build modern, resilient infrastructure to address climate change, promote environmental justice, and enhance opportunity and productivity, strengthen education, improve career pathways, and develop the workforce of the future, fix our broken immigration system, and finally promote American business, goods, and tourism to the global economy. I want to thank all the mayors who participated in the 5 working groups that produced these recommendations, including Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, Cincinnati Mayor John Cranley, and Tampa Mayor Jane Kester, who led our police reform and racial justice work group, whose recommendations we released just this past week. And while I would happily detail our plans to achieve the goals set out within each of these 10 priorities, let me focus on just 3. First is fostering an economic recovery that produces a stronger America for all Americans. COVID-19 has claimed about 170,000 American lives, devastated our economy, and once again revealed society's deep inequity. We've seen how Americans who are also members of racial and ethnic minority groups are at an increased risk, in part because they're less likely to have health insurance and more likely to work in essential jobs that can't be done from home. The COVID-19 crisis has also exposed how infrastructure financing and the investment practices that govern our most basic services and networks, including transportation, water, and energy systems, too often impose additional burdens on underserved and underrepresented people and their families. To create an economic recovery worthy of all America, we have to rebuild an economy that works better than the one we lost in March. That means supporting small businesses, because small businesses across the country are facing enormous economic hardship, and many have already been forced to close, killing jobs and hurting local communities. Congress should provide new guidelines to spend the remaining $130 billion left in the Paycheck Protection Program and provide $120 billion to restaurants through the Bipartisan Restaurant Act. The federal government must also provide targeted assistance, such as direct compensation and debt forgiveness to minority and women-owned business enterprises, which are struggling to stay afloat in the pandemic, and to businesses in America's farming and rural communities. This conference represents America's cities, but we recognize and respect the plight and the importance of the farmers and farming communities that put food on America's tables. We are all in this together. And that's especially true now, because the question of how to put food on the table is getting harder to answer for millions of families that have experienced a loss of income due to COVID-19. That's why America's mayors urge Congress to pass the unemployment insurance extension to resume the $600 a week unemployment benefits boost until March 2021. Additionally, Congress should also pass the monthly Economic Crisis Support Act to put money directly into the hands of those hardest hit by the pandemic. And as we've been saying for months now, cities of all sizes across the country are experiencing significant revenue shortfalls as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and are in dire need of immediate and near-term infusions of direct, flexible federal aid distributed by formula to all municipalities, not just those cities with populations exceeding 500,000 people. Mayors are calling for direct and significant federal aid to cities of at least $250 billion of fiscal assistance over and above state aid, which must be provided immediately to get cities through budgeting for the next fiscal year without being forced to cut essential services like frontline public health workers and police and firefighters. The second priority I want to highlight is dismantling systemic racism and advancing human and civil rights. To do that, we first have to understand and accept that ending racism in America is the responsibility of every American and to the benefit of every American, because ensuring that every American has a fair shot at the American dream makes our entire country stronger and more prosperous. To do that, we must acknowledge the history and legacy of racist policies and practices like redlining and urban renewal, policies that robbed Black Americans of the opportunity to build and pass on generational wealth. America's governments and institutions are complicit in establishing and perpetuating systems that have produced a host of cruel racial disparities, including the fact that the average white family in America has 10 times the wealth of the average Black family. To address this disparity and to ensure that every American has the chance to realize their full human potential, we must take other steps that include consistently and unreservedly enforcing the Federal Fair Housing Act, which helps local governments address discrimination and segregated housing patterns and take action to remedy past housing discrimination. Establishing a federal commission to study and propose reparations for African Americans. Supporting and working to achieve passage of the Equal Rights Amendment and the implementation of policies that ensure genuine economic equality for women. Supporting LGBTQ rights and working toward guaranteeing them in every city and in the nation as a whole. And reviving civility and respect by listening respectfully to people who have different views. Supporting efforts to work together across ideological and political lines and working to rebuild civic trust through civil discourse, particularly during election seasons. In fact, I hope everybody who reads our mayor's vision for America understands that one goal, one priority that underlies all the others is that America's mayors are eager to work with our fellow public servants in Washington. And that's the third priority I want to highlight, the urgent need to establish a stronger local federal partnership, a partnership that's more effective, efficient, and accountable to the American people. Our country is facing way too many challenges, too many threats for any one faction to defeat them alone. We must address these human challenges without partisanship. As mayors, we see the human impact of the challenges our country is facing up close and every day. And we see something else as well, the resilience and resourcefulness of the American people. Because as formidable as our challenges may be, none of them are greater than the capacity of the American people to overcome them if we work together. If we decide it's finally time to turn the page on partisanship, division, and racism. If we accept that we have to own our history, all of it, the proud moments, the painful moments, and make the choice to seize the opportunity of this challenging moment and transform our country. That's how we create an American breakthrough. The invitation from America's mayors is this: let's learn from our past, live fully in this present, and create a future for America that offers equity, justice, and opportunity for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. And we know that platforms are agreed to and passed, but we know that it's the mayors of this nation who implement the goals that you have mentioned. And so we guarantee you, with your leadership, we will do everything we can to work through transitions through the first 100 days to make the goals of the American breakthrough a reality. And so now we come to our last speaker, ladies and gentlemen. Ohio, Ohio, Ohio. They all want to carry Ohio. And from Ohio, we have today one of our fiercest advocates of all. She has championed our cause for emergency physical assistance throughout this nation. She pulls no punches for all to understand that all cities must be recognized. You know, it's not just New York, it's not just LA, it's not Chicago, it's not Houston, but it's Dayton and it's Lima, and it's all of the heartland mayors that need help. We have to have those mayors to be stronger for a stronger national economy. Our next speaker gives her life to what President Kennedy once says, the noble art of politics. She's one of the best. And she recognizes that Washington must change. Washington must change to support a new way of including all cities, regardless of size, if we are to have a strong America we all want. Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to present to you the Vice President of the United States Conference of Mayors, the Vice President of the National Conference of Democratic Mayors from the great city of Dayton, Mayor Nan Whaley.
Thank you, Tom, for that wonderful introduction. It's great to be with you all virtually. I wish we were in Mayor Barrett's city in Milwaukee and having a great convention. We'll have to do it this virtual way with our buttons and our signs that have been sent with us, and we'll certainly be getting our message out over the next week. And I'm proud to be Vice President of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and I'm proud to be the Vice President of the Democratic Mayors. And so I want to speak to you, Democratic mayors, today because in order, I believe, for the American breakthrough to happen, I believe a change needs to happen in 78 days, and that's electing Joe Biden as our President of the United States and Kamala Harris as Vice President. Anybody that has read the Wall Street Journal yesterday can see that the president has decided that mayors of cities are his enemy. We are on the blocks here, and the only way to make sure that we can get the breakthrough that our communities need and that our citizens so desperately need to have, particularly during this unprecedented time, is for us to do the work that we know needs to happen in these next 77 days. Mayors, you are now the keepers of the democracy, making sure that your people in your community have access to the ballot box, are able to get there during this unprecedented time. And so while all my other fellow mayors talked about the importance of why this election is so important and why it matters to our community, I'm talking to you today to beg you to get very active in the next 78 days. If you haven't worked with your staff to start thinking about how you can encourage voter participation, how you can make those lines easier for your communities, we are not protecting democracy. And mayors across the country can make the difference this November that our fight is a fair fight and one that people can actually access. That's what we're about anyway. Our cities work best when everybody is in, and mayors, we need your help to make sure that everybody gets in to participate in democracy this November. I'm so proud of the work that President Greg Fisher has done in leading the American breakthrough. I believe in mayors and what they can accomplish. I know that this has been one of the most difficult years to be a mayor for many, many years before. And I am so proud of what I see, from Keisha Lance Bottoms to Tim DeGeeter to the folks all across the country that are doing the amazing work of protecting our cities and fighting for access for our folks to provide services. And I know that if we elect President Joe Biden, that he will have mayors' backs because he understands how hard our jobs are. He understands the needs that our communities have, both big and small, and he will make sure that we have the access to provide the services that we need for our cities. So let's get busy, let's get to work, let's enjoy this week, but mayors, let's talk about how we can make sure we have access to the voting box. Please reach out to Virginia Mayor on this work. And I also want to invite you tomorrow. We'll be having a conversation with the campaign manager for Joe Biden, Jen O'Malley Dillon, for mayors at 4 o'clock. So if you haven't joined up, please join us tomorrow to hear that conversation, to understand the strategy of how we win, which I know we're going to, because it's going to be the work of you all calling out when we see access to voting being threatened and making sure that during this unprecedented time, everyone in our community gets to vote. Thank you, Tom, for this opportunity. Thank you to the U.S. Conference of Mayors staff and Democratic Mayor staff. Now let's, as Tom Barrett texted me, now let's win this damn thing. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Whaley. And let me just say in closing that the mayors, the elected officials, are the wind beneath our wings. These two organizations, along with the National League of Cities, the National Association of Counties, we are fighting hard as we speak for emergency fiscal assistance to make sure that we can survive through this incredible pandemic that we're all living through. A special shout out to Virginia Meyer, the executive director of the Democratic Mayors, who worked with us to make this event so special. On the eve of the 2020 Democratic National Convention, hello, Milwaukee. We are there with you in spirit. Thank you very much. And that closes our meeting today.
You will, everybody. See you soon.